I never thought running out of phone battery in a foreign country would lead to the most intimate moment of my life. One second, I was snapping photos of the narrow Roman streets, golden light hitting every worn stone just right, and the next, I was standing alone in a quiet alley, no signal, no map, no clue where I was. The sun was starting to dip, my legs ached from walking all day, and I could feel my anxiety creeping in like shadows. And then, out of nowhere, a stranger with a voice like velvet and a smile that could melt concrete changed everything. It was my first time in Italy. I'd planned the trip mostly on a whim. I was 27, single, and tired of feeling stuck in my job back in the States. I'd saved up vacation days, booked a few cheap flights, and made a rough itinerary with more dreams than details. Rome had always fascinated me, not just for its history, but for the energy it seemed to hold. Something about the ancient ruins and chaotic scooters, the espresso bars and echoing cathedrals had always called to me. But I hadn't planned on getting lost so fast. That afternoon, I'd wandered off the main path near Trastevere, following the cobblestone streets as they narrowed and twisted between old stone buildings draped in ivy. My phone had been my guide all day until it wasn't. One too many photos of doorways and hidden fountains, and suddenly the screen went black. Dead. I laughed at first, thinking I'd find my way back easily. But after 20 minutes of looping the same unfamiliar corners and failing to make sense of the signs, my smile faded. I don't speak Italian. Not even a little. And while I'd heard that most people in Rome spoke some English, in this quiet residential neighborhood, every doorway I passed seemed closed and silent. That's when I saw him. He was walking a brown and white dog, sunglasses pushed up into his dark, thick hair, wearing a fitted gray t-shirt that made his arms look ridiculous in the best way. Tall, tan, with a strong jawline and that kind of effortless beauty Italians are just unfairly born with. But what stopped me wasn't just how he looked. It was how he looked at me. He paused when he saw me, eyebrows lifting slightly like he could tell I didn't belong there. His dog sat at his feet obediently as he took off his sunglasses and spoke, his voice smooth and low. "You are looking for something?" I blinked, taken off guard by his accent, his voice, his everything. "Yeah," I said with an awkward laugh. "Actually, I'm very lost." He smiled, wide and genuine, and it did something to me I wasn't ready to admit yet. "My name is Matteo," he said, offering his hand. "I speak some English. Maybe I can help." I took his hand and nodded, heart pounding a little too fast. "I'm Ben." And just like that, we started walking together. He offered me water from a cafe, guided me gently through streets I couldn't have navigated alone, and pointed out landmarks in slow, careful English. Every time he spoke, I felt myself leaning into the sound of it, the soft roll of his R's, the way his smile never quite left his face. "You have no phone?" he asked, glancing at my dead device in my hand. "Totally dead," I said. "I didn't plan very well." He laughed, and it was warm and full. "Then maybe you stay. Charge it. My place is close." I hesitated for only a second. Maybe I should have felt nervous. Maybe it was foolish to follow a man I just met. But nothing about Matteo felt dangerous. If anything, it felt like I was being pulled into something I didn't understand yet. "Okay," I said. And so we turned the corner, and I followed him into something I didn't know how to name yet, but I knew I'd never forget. Mateo's apartment was tucked above a quiet street near a small piazza with flowering vines curling along the railing of his balcony and laundry lines swaying softly in the evening air. Hey, if you're hearing this, you're one of the 10% and we really appreciate it. Leave a comment if you're enjoying the story. It helps the video reach more people. Thank you so much. Now, back to the story. As we climbed the narrow stone stairs, I realized how quiet the city felt from this height, like a secret world just above the noise. He unlocked the door and motioned for me to enter first. The space was warm and lived in. Wooden beams ran across the ceiling, and books were stacked in cozy chaos on the shelves and window sills. A few old records leaned beside a player, soft jazz floating in the background like it had been playing for hours. It smelled like coffee and something faintly herbal, probably whatever cologne he was wearing. "Here," he said, motioning to the small kitchen table. "You sit. I get cable? Charger?" I offered, smiling. Yes, he laughed, shaking his head. "Charger. You see, I learn." He plugged my phone in near the kitchen window, then poured 2 small glasses of water and set them down in front of me. His dog settled on the floor nearby, tail wagging lazily, and Matteo leaned back in his chair with one arm draped over it, watching me with a curious softness. "You are from America?" he asked. "Yeah. I live in Chicago." "Cold?" he said with a mock shiver, making me laugh. "You come here alone?" I nodded. "Needed a reset, I guess. Time to breathe." He seemed to understand that without needing more words. "Rome is good for breathing," he said, tapping his chest gently. "It makes you feel something in here." He wasn't wrong. Sitting there in that quiet apartment, sunlight slipping across his face, I felt something stir in me I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't quite name it, but it was warm, present, alive. We talked for a while, slipping between his English and my attempts at understanding his rhythm. He told me he used to work in architecture but now mostly freelanced and taught yoga part-time. He joked that he made more money fixing espresso machines in his neighborhood than designing anything. He made pasta sometimes for his neighbors. He loved slow mornings, warm bread, old movies. He was easy to listen to, even easier to look at. At one point, I realized I'd been watching his hands. Long fingers, tan skin, a simple bracelet on one wrist. I wondered what it would feel like to be touched by them. The thought came uninvited, but I didn't push it away. He caught my eyes on him, and the corner of his mouth curved up, just a little. "Ben," he said quietly, "you are okay?" I nodded, but something in my voice came out too soft. "Yeah, just you're very kind. I didn't expect any of this." He looked at me then, really looked, and the moment stretched between us, slow and full of heat. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood, walked over, and knelt next to my chair, one hand resting gently on my knee. "I think," he said slowly, accent thick and low, "this moment is not only kindness." His hand stayed there, steady, warm, and my breath caught in my throat. I didn't speak, couldn't, so I leaned forward and kissed him. It started soft, a test. His lips were full and warm, his breath slow as he responded. His hand moved to the back of my neck, guiding me closer, and I melted into him without resistance. There was no urgency, just this unspoken sense that we were unlocking something neither of us had meant to find. When we finally pulled back, he kept his forehead pressed against mine. "You feel it too?" he asked. "Yes," I breathed. "I don't even know why, but I do." He stood, took my hand, and led me gently toward the bedroom down the narrow hall. Nothing rushed, nothing spoken, just a silent, shared understanding that something real had found us, completely by accident. His bedroom was small, with a large window open to the warm Roman night and soft white curtains swaying gently in the breeze. The light was low, the sheets rumpled, the space intimate but not staged, like it was made to feel lived in, not perfect. Matteo stood near the bed, his eyes on mine, waiting for me to move first. And I did. I stepped forward slowly and kissed him again, this time with more certainty. His hands found my waist, then slid up my back, pulling me in so we were chest to chest, breath to breath. His mouth was soft but sure, moving with mine like he already knew my rhythm. There was nothing awkward or shy about the way he touched me. Only care, only quiet hunger. He murmured something in Italian against my neck that I didn't understand, but the tone said everything. His fingers slipped beneath my shirt, skin to skin now, and I let out a quiet breath as he pulled it over my head and tossed it gently aside. I watched him do the same, his tan torso strong and smooth, his chest lightly dusted with hair, his stomach tight with lean muscle. The way he looked at me, like he was taking in every part of me, not just my body, made my throat tighten. "You are beautiful," he said softly, the accent curling around each word like a whisper I never wanted to end. I smiled, my heart hammering. "So are you." He pulled me onto the bed with him, and we lay there, touching slowly, discovering each other in a way that was almost reverent. My fingers traced the lines of his collarbone, down his arm, across his ribs. He kissed me like he had time, like every part of this deserved his full attention. It wasn't fast. It wasn't frenzied. It was tender. He kissed down my chest, over my stomach, and every time his mouth touched my skin, my breath hitched. I found myself whispering his name, not even realizing it until he looked up at me again with that same gaze. Quiet, warm, knowing. "Piano," he said softly. "Slow." And we did go slow. Our hands moved carefully, mouths meeting again and again. Our legs tangled beneath the sheets as we lost ourselves in each other. It wasn't about lust. It was about feeling everything. The weight of his body above mine, the warmth of his breath, the way he whispered English words like yes and so good with a soft urgency that made me ache. When we finally reached that moment, that peak, it wasn't loud or wild. It was quiet, drawn out, our hands gripping tight as if to keep from floating away. And when we collapsed into each other afterward, breathing hard, skin warm with sweat, neither of us let go. He pressed a kiss to my temple, then pulled me close so that my head rested on his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath my ear. "You stay," he whispered. I nodded without hesitation. "I don't want to leave." Outside, the street below was quiet, the whole city lulled by the night. But in that little room, something had shifted. I didn't feel like a lost tourist anymore. I felt found. I woke before him. The room was still dim, the soft gray light of early morning creeping in through the window, painting everything in a quiet calm. I turned my head slowly and saw Matteo lying on his side, one arm tucked under his head, his bare chest rising and falling with each breath. His hair was slightly messy and the faintest smile played on his lips, like whatever dream he was in was a good one. I didn't move. I didn't want to break the stillness. Instead, I studied the way his joy relaxed in sleep, the way his hand had found its way to my waist during the night. It felt strange and perfect all at once, to wake up like this, in someone's arms, in someone's bed, in a country I barely knew and yet feel completely safe. He stirred a little, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw me watching him, his smile widened, lazy and real. "Buongiorno," he said, voice raspy from sleep. "Morning," I whispered back, unable to stop smiling. He reached up and brushed a finger gently along my cheek. "You are still here? You asked me to stay." He nodded. "I'm glad." We lay there for a while, quiet, content, not rushing toward anything. Eventually, he pulled me closer and kissed my forehead. "Hungry?" I laughed softly. "Starving." He threw the sheets off with a grin and stood, stretching, his body bathed in pale light. I watched him move around the kitchen, shirtless, humming softly in Italian as he poured coffee and sliced bread, and for a second I forgot this wasn't my life. It felt like it could be. When we sat down to eat, he reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. "I don't do this," he said quietly. "Bring someone home. Not like this." "I don't either," I admitted. "But I'm really glad we did." He nodded, eyes searching mine. "Today, we see the city. Together, yes?" I smiled. "Yes." And just like that, breakfast turned into a day I wouldn't forget. We didn't plan the day. We didn't need to. After breakfast, Matteo handed me a clean t-shirt from his drawer and said, "You look more Italian now," with a wink that made me laugh. Then we stepped out into the streets of Rome and everything felt different. Maybe it was the way the sun hit the stone buildings just right, or the way Matteo walked slightly closer than before, our shoulders brushing with every step. Maybe it was the way people smiled at him and greeted him in passing, and how he would introduce me casually, "Questo è ben," like I already belonged in his world. We wandered through quiet courtyards and lively markets, stopped for espresso at a corner cafe, and got gelato even though it wasn't quite noon. He showed me his favorite bookstore where the owner spoke no English but gave me a little bow when Matteo called me il suo amico speciale. I asked what it meant and he just smiled. "A special friend," he said. "But maybe more." I didn't know how to answer. But I felt it, the flutter in my chest, the way I kept glancing at him like I was still trying to understand what had happened between us and what was happening still. At the Spanish Steps we sat side by side, watching the crowds pass by. I felt his hand slide gently over mine, fingers weaving together, and I didn't care who saw. "I've never done this either," I said after a while, keeping my eyes forward. "Falling into something. Without warning." He leaned in, pressing his lips to my shoulder. "Sometimes it happens fast. But it's real anyway." I turned to face him then, searching his eyes. "Do you want it to keep going?" I asked. He looked at me, steady, certain. "Yes." We walked back to his place in the golden haze of late afternoon, quiet but not awkward. It was the silence of two people who had already said enough and who understood that what came next didn't need to be rushed. That night, when we returned to his apartment and the door closed behind us, he pulled me into a kiss without hesitation. It was familiar now and still, somehow, even better. We undressed slowly, no nerves this time, only warmth. Only clarity. And when we made love again, it wasn't like the first night. It was slower. Deeper. More sure. This time, we weren't strangers anymore. I stayed for 3 more days. It wasn't planned. I pushed back a train I'd never boarded, canceled a museum tour I didn't care about, and let my suitcase remain half-packed in a corner of Matteo's room. Each morning, we woke tangled in the same sheets, his hand resting somewhere on my skin like he was afraid I might disappear in the night. And each time I opened my eyes, I knew I didn't want to be anywhere else. We made coffee slowly. We kissed between sips. We showered together and laughed when the water turned cold halfway through. He taught me words in Italian I couldn't pronounce properly, and I taught him to say, "I like you a lot," without dropping the L. Every moment was simple and unforgettable. On our last night, we sat on his balcony, the city lights flickering beneath us, the buzz of scooters and laughter drifting up from the streets. He poured us both a glass of wine and leaned back in his chair, one leg brushing mine under the table. "I will miss this," he said. "Me too," I admitted, my voice quieter than I meant. He turned to me. "What happens now?" I stared at the glass in my hands for a long moment before answering. "I don't know. But I don't want this to be goodbye." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe it is. See you soon?" I smiled. "Yeah. Let's start with that." That night, we held each other a little tighter. We kissed slower. And when we made love, it wasn't wild or desperate, it was soft and long and filled with everything we hadn't put into words. When I left the next morning, he walked me to the edge of the piazza, hand in mine the whole way. We kissed there on the sidewalk like no one was watching, like Rome itself had given us its blessing. And as the train pulled away and I saw his figure getting smaller, I felt something I hadn't expected. I didn't feel lost anymore. Because sometimes you go searching for a city and end up finding something else entirely.